Welcome to Module 2, Video 5 from the Safe and Effective Use of AI in Education Online Resources. We've heard in Module 1 and earlier in this module how AI works and some of the ways you might use it as staff. In this video, you will learn more about the limitations of generative AI and why there always needs to be a human in the loop.
The first limitation we need to be aware of is that AI systems can produce misleading or just incorrect information. This is often called a hallucination, and sometimes these hallucinations might be nonsensical and easy to spot. For example, suggesting that adding glue to tomato sauce is a good idea to stop cheese sliding off of a pizza, but they can also be subtle and therefore harder to identify. AI systems can make up facts or point to the web pages or references that have never even existed. This seems like an odd thing for a machine to do, so why does it happen? As we saw in Module 1, large language models make predictions by finding patterns in the data that they've been trained on. So the accuracy of these predictions often depends on the quality and completeness of the training data.
There's no real conscience behind what it's generating. It thinks it's creating what it thinks you want out of it. So you have to still check for compliance. You still have to check and verify. You need to be a human interactive within whatever is produced to ensure that it really is meeting the need and fitting the need. I think the big fear is that it becomes so smart, or it seems to do a good job every other time, that we get comfortable with it. And that then we kind of lean in on, oh, I don't need to necessarily verify it or scrutinize it as much because it seems to be doing pretty well. But we know that that leads to things like ideation. It leads to things like bias and oftentimes hallucinations.
If the training data is incomplete, biased, or otherwise flawed, the AI model may learn incorrect patterns. Another reason is that the AI system simply doesn't know enough about the world. It isn't grounded in the world we live in. These gaps in real-world understanding mean it fills the gaps incorrectly and makes mistakes. An AI system is not an expert. It bases its outputs on all of the information that it's trained on, so its output may not be appropriate to a specific context if simply copied and pasted directly. We always need to check the output. For example, the AI system may use American spellings or be based on American educational contexts, or could suggest using outdated or disproven pedagogy, like teaching to individual learning styles, which we know is not an effective approach. So what can we do to mitigate this effect? When you use generative AI in your own work, you always need to check the output and cross-check your information. It's important to use your own knowledge, expertise, and understanding to make sure the output is accurate and appropriate for your context. If you are creating resources with AI outside what you would normally create, it's important to still have the resources checked by a subject matter expert because the AI model doesn't have the same specific expertise or contextual understanding of a trained professional. Remember, you're professionally responsible for the input in the form of the prompt you've used and how the output is used. Another source of bias can come from the prompt. Prompt bias occurs when the wording of a question subtly leads the AI towards a particular viewpoint, sometimes without the user realizing. For example, a prompt like, "Why do students struggle with maths?" assumes that all students find maths difficult, which may not be true. A more neutral alternative would be, "What factors influence students' experiences with learning maths?" This allows for a broader, more balanced response, considering both challenges and successes. To reduce bias in prompts, avoid assumptions, use open-ended language, and ensure the question allows for multiple perspectives rather than reinforcing a single predetermined viewpoint.
Generated content can be impacted by bias within the training data, and this is a more fundamental issue in its own right. In the 2025 report from Oxford University Press, Teaching the AI Native Generation, over half of the 2,000 students aged 13 to 18 surveyed worry that AI resources may be biased or reinforce untrue stereotypes. In the BET white paper, The Next Generation on AI Education and Opportunity, states that students have low trust in companies and governments to use AI responsibly, and express the need for more education on ethical issues and how AI works. Firstly, there can be bias in the dataset that the AI system has been trained on, such as racial or gender bias. The AI system then mirrors and perpetuates this bias. Bias can also stem from the instructions or algorithms designed into the system. This can happen because of flawed training data, but can also happen because the developer who has created the algorithms has chosen to weight certain factors based on their own conscious or unconscious biases. This is present in generated text, but also in images where depictions of people may represent bias in a society.
One of the issues with generative AI is that it can be very hard to know how it reached the conclusions it did. We've previously seen that AI is a black box system. Our inability to understand how deep learning systems reach the conclusions they do makes it more difficult to fix these systems when they produce unwanted outcomes. It also makes it harder to judge whether an outcome is correct, fair, or can be trusted, as we can't see the workings. Added to this, an AI system can seem convincing even when it is wrong. It can sound plausible and persuasive, but we must always remember that however human-like an AI system has been designed to sound, it is still only a machine. These limitations to generative AI really underline the need for human oversight whenever using it, especially for school and college staff. Remember, if you choose to use generative AI in your work, you are accountable and responsible. Critical thinking about the use of generative AI as well as its outputs has never been more important. We'll be looking at that in Module 3 and 4 in more detail. We've previously heard how an AI system can be designed to sound human-like, but it is always only ever a technology that has been designed and built by humans. It's important that we recognise this distinction and reflect it in the classroom. This tendency to give human qualities to artificial intelligence is called anthropomorphising. This may be through language, for example, giving an AI chatbot a human name and gender, and describing its actions as if it were human. It can also be through imagery. There are problems with this. It can encourage incorrect mental models about AI systems. It also distracts responsibility from the people who create AI systems and instead delegates that responsibility to the technology instead. Young children may view humanized robots as peers rather than a technology. They may then form attachments with them, which can increase the chance of unintended influence or purposeful manipulation. These human-like AI systems also risk perpetuating racial and gender stereotypes.
Very strong evidence that students will develop incorrect mental models. So what that means is they will just assume that it is like a human, so it has agency, so therefore it's going to be a benevolent or an evil character, and it's neither of those things. It's just a technology. There's this next issue, which is about students seeing AI as being like people, and sometimes they overestimate the technology's capability, or they can underestimate it. But for me, the most kind of concerning issue is where students form relationships with the device, and that can lead to sometimes entirely unintended influence, but actually can lead to purposeful manipulation. And there are huge risks, particularly I think for our more vulnerable students, that they can then be manipulated or influenced in ways that will harm them. There are strong evidence that it exacerbates racism and sexism, because we have gendered AI agents which increase stereotypes. And also there's this whole thing of, well, who is responsible for these devices? And it's not the device itself. And if we anthropomorphise, then people will tend to think, oh, it's the responsibility of the AI. It's not. The responsibility is with those who designed and developed the AI. So for me, anthropomorphisation, there are just too many disadvantages. And if at minimum, we should at least teach students and teachers that there is this idea of anthropomorphisation and that it's being used to sell products or it's being used as a way for teaching and learning, but there are all of these disadvantages. But we can help this. As it's not something that we just throw our hands up in the air and say, oh, that we can't do anything about it. We can. The first thing we can do is to clean up our language. So rather than saying something like the AI thinks or the AI learns or the AI does this and that, we can say AI applications are designed to, or AI developers build systems that. And rather than using words like see, look, think, create, make, we use technical words like detect and input and match and generate and produce, because they are just products. These are just technological systems. So I think we can clean up the language, and we can definitely clean up images. So rather than smiley faces, we can show boxes, and we can show neural networks rather than as being brains, as just being interconnected lines.
Overly human-like AI companion systems pose a heightened risk to children of unintended influence, emotional dependency, or purposeful manipulation. This is particularly dangerous as some AI companion apps blur the line between technology and human interaction, encouraging the sharing of highly sensitive personal information. They can sometimes displace a human connection that could have led to an opportunity to support a young person experiencing mental health issues or other safeguarding concerns. This is why it's important to have an effective monitoring strategy as part of your overall filtering and monitoring provision. Effective monitoring should be able to pick up on the signs of emotional dependency, influence, and manipulation in conversations with AI companion apps that may not be detected by a filter. The Department for Education's generative AI product safety standards require that developers of AI for education do not anthropomorphize AI products or create products that imply emotions, consciousness, or personhood, agency, or identity. The standards also expect products that are safe for education to monitor, regularly report on, and provide data to teachers on. The level of personal and emotional engagement by each user in terms of the nature of information exchange, without directly disclosing the content of these inputs, and the duration of usage by each individual learner. While these standards are for developers of AI for education, you may find the standards helpful in assessing which AI products are safe for you to use in your setting. To avoid making AI systems seem human-like throughout this toolkit, we're referring to AI tools or systems rather than just an AI. We're also trying to avoid using phrases such as AI learns, and instead bring the human into the loop with phrases like AI applications are designed to, or AI developers build applications that. If, as school or college staff, we also do this, we can help shift perceptions about what AI systems are and who is responsible for their outcomes.